Welcome back to A Corporate Time. On Zoom with us right now.
Maybe the most legendary entertainment figure we've ever had on the show.
Yeah,
I'll
I
say
agree,
that.
yeah.
I will say that this
An
particular
incredibly historic brand.
yes, one of the most historic brands of comedic entertainment and natural, organic comedic entertainment. And on the line with us right now from Candid Camera, and we're going to talk about his books and all the different articles he writes. It's Peter Funt. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, but that intro does not say a lot about your show. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Well, that's what we listen, Peter. We just want to acknowledge that what you've been a part of in your career is historic in media and entertainment.
I'll just say it. Me and my father watched your father, and there were like unmistakable memories we had of sitting down and watching those shows. It was like back when you would say, Dad would be like, "Oh, Candid Camera's on," and you would run from your room and jump on the couch. There was no DVR.
Yeah.
There was no catching it later. You had to be there when it was on.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that.
Well, and that's exactly how it was in my house when I was growing up. You know, watching my dad's show each Sunday evening was a family ritual. And we didn't even have a choice. I mean, he shooed us into the room where the TV was, and we couldn't say a word during the show. And, you know, the funny thing about my dad, he had a couch in there that he was on when he watched TV. And I don't think there was any show he ever watched in his life, at least that I can remember, that he did not fall asleep during, except Candid Camera.
Right.
Now, Peter, you were on Candid Camera when you were 3 years old, correct?
Yep. He got me started at 3, and he pushed me out on the street in New York City with a shoe shine box and told me to try to charge $10 per shoe. And I guess his thought was, how would business people or older folks react to such an audacious young entrepreneur? I have no memory of it. And, you know, they never saved the footage. Back in those days, it was one and done. So you shot it, you put it on TV, and you threw it away.
Crazy.
It happened to a lot of old shows. You know, a lot of Johnny Carson's best stuff was recorded over by NBC. They just never dreamed back then that here in 2023, we'd be kind of curious, gosh, what did that look like? But
do you have the ability to have the entire Candid Camera collection over, you know, since the 40s until now, or do you guys have to just do your best to try and gather as much as you have?
Well, our library is complete from 1960 to the present. We have every foot of everything shot in that period. Prior to 1960, and Candid Camera did go on in 1948, so there's 12 years there.
That's a lot.
That we have some, but we don't have everything.
God, imagine somebody like dumpster dived in the studios back in the day and they have those tapes somewhere.
Well,
man.
they recorded over. They just like a security camera tape, I think, right?
Am I correct that this started as like a radio program? Because that's what we would do at the radio station. We would record on a tape, and then when the day was done, we'd put the tape back in and record over it the next day.
Yeah. So a bunch of questions there. To Sam's point, there are dumpster divers. And it's amazing. All you have to do is look on eBay to see what they managed to find in terms of vintage TV. What makes me a little frustrated is I think these guys became good at finding stuff before it was lost. In other words, they got it from somebody who worked at the station or, you know, sort of borrowed it and never gave it back, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Yes, Candid Camera started as a radio show in 1947. It was called Candid Microphone, which was good for radio. And that was how my dad got started. The thing is, at first, at the very birth of the radio show, he thought it would be satisfactory to just tape record ordinary conversation when people didn't know they were being recorded. So he'd plant a mic at a lunch counter or, in a waiting room just to pick up ordinary chatter. And it turned out to be dreadfully dull. And so I tell you exactly what happened. He was struggling with this dull material. And one day he was in a dentist's office because he wanted to record the conversation between the dentist and his patient. He was installing his microphone in the drill apparatus hanging above the chair, and the unsuspecting patient walked in too early and mistook my dad for the dentist. So my father just rolled into it, played the part of the dentist, and it turned out to be pretty funny. He poked around in there and said he couldn't find this tooth or that tooth, and it wasn't hilarious, but he realized that day it all worked better if you had some kind of provocateur, somebody to sort of make humor out of it. And when that went to television as Candid Camera, well, then it was gold. It worked out even better, and that's how we do it.
So, Peter,
that's crazy.
That leads me to my next question, because all these different Candid Camera skits
so
and
many
the premises.
Gags. So many.
Who did your dad come up with the vast majority of them? Did you come? I mean, was there a team of writers eventually?
Did you guys like storyboard it out and try to?
Because that's the brilliance in Candid Camera, is just coming up with the idea behind whatever Candid Camera thing you were capturing.
Yeah, you flatter us by referring to a team of writers, because we never had that. And the few that we had over the years weren't much help, because they were professional comedy writers, and that really, we weren't looking for jokes. So the truth is, in my dad's era and then in mine, we each made up the vast majority of the Candid Camera ideas. And our approach was very simple. We'd go out every day and lead our normal lives, and we'd keep careful track of all the little things that drive us crazy. And rather than get angry, we tried to make it into a Candid Camera sequence. In other words, exaggerate the problem. So, for example, I'm in a parking lot taking my wife shopping, and as I exit the lot, there's one of those, you put your money in or your credit card, and then the bar goes up. And then a few seconds later, the bar goes down. And I got caught. It was a little too fast. Nothing bad happened, but it clicked in my head. This could be a gag. So I exaggerated it this way. I put the machine a little bit too far away, so the motorist would have to get out of his or her car to put the money or credit card or whatever in, and the bar would go up. While they got back in their car, we were controlling this bar, and the bar goes down.
Genius.
So we took an everyday real life problem, exaggerated it to make a point, and it was just fantastic. Now, you never know what you're going to get. We had people start, stop, start. They couldn't beat the bar. But of course, our good fortune paid off at the end of the day. A guy in his pickup truck tried it once, tried it twice, and then without saying a word, got out, went to the back of his truck, took a handsaw, came back, and just sawed the bar right off, the wooden bar, just sawed it off and drove away.
And you're like, did we get that? Did we get that? Yeah.
And we got it, and you couldn't script that sort of thing, That's the beauty of real life.
Yeah, but Peter, you're essentially doing what Larry David or Seinfeld or any stand-up comedian is brilliant.
Look at YouTube now, though. Well, YouTube now is...
No, but Tom is exactly right. When I do my little stage talks about Candid Camera and in my book, I point out that there are a couple shows that I think hook up with Candid Camera in a way you might not expect. One is the Ed Sullivan Show, the old variety show. Now, what the heck does that have to do with Candid Camera? Very little, except that Ed Sullivan's concept was a variety of entertaining things, not just singers, not just comedians, but a variety. And I found that Candid Camera lasts well over so many decades because we do a variety of hidden camera experiences. It's not just pranking someone's girlfriend. It's no one thing, it's everything. Then the other TV show that I mentioned is Seinfeld, because with due respect to Jerry and Larry David, Candid Camera was the original show about nothing.
Yeah,
you're right.
We specialized in nothing.
Everyday things that you take it and then tweak it and find what's funny about it, and then you present it.
But I imagine that the process in the Seinfeld writers' room was exactly the same as my dad and I followed, which is look for those little things that we wonder about or drive us crazy. In Jerry's case, it might have been, is fat-free yogurt really fat-free?
Right.
And then exaggerate it, in his case, into a comedy sitcom, and in our case, into a real-life joke.
It's brilliant,
awesome.
Peter.
That's
and
awesome.
I also like when you're doing, like, you have such an amount of footage, and it really is a study in sociology and human behavior.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if have sociologists sat down and just studied the footage,
Yeah,
because
give me those files.
each joke or gag is a study of human behavior and how humans react in certain situations. I'm wondering if anybody's ever, a scientist has ever looked into it, or a sociologist.
Our footage is cataloged and available to the colleges and universities around the world, thanks to a collection at Cornell and another collection at Stanford University.
Wow.
And, I said Stanford because I lived in Connecticut, but I mean Stanford, of course.
Gotcha.
But that school in California.
Yeah.
The point is, yes, the sociologists and psychologists have studied our material, and they continue to use it in classrooms to this day. It's not useful in discovering points, because we don't attempt a truly scientific sample. We have entertainment on our mind, not science. But it's very good at illustrating points that the experts have already figured out. But these are real life examples of how people behave.
That is incredibly interesting that they're able to use those to kind of, I guess, put an exclamation point on something that they're teaching. Like, here it is in real.
It's an insane library of human behavior and how people act. And like,
do you know how many gags you've done total? Is there a total number?
No, I really don't. It's thousands and thousands.
And maybe some in the future, right? I mean, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that, but I mean, it's on the internet. People are saying that you're cooking something up.
Our YouTube channel is quite successful, and people keep writing in and saying, when are you coming back? So I hooked up with a production company called Village Roadshow Entertainment. They do a lot of stuff. And then we contracted with Taraji P. Henson. So she's going to be my new partner.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Episodes of Candid Camera. Now, I don't know exactly when that'll start, maybe later this year. And, so check your local listings.
Yeah, I'll watch for sure with the family.
That's
the
plan.
Yeah, that sounds amazing that, and it's still going to be the same, show, just brand new.
Village Roadshow's marketing people wrote an ad, I guess you'd call it, for the new show. And it actually said, so what is new and different about the new Candid Camera in 2023? And then in smaller type underneath it said, nothing.
That's awesome.
Because I stress that our show is always fresh, no matter what year we do it, for two key reasons. Number one, our material is as timely as the zeitgeist. Whatever's going on in the world and in people's life, that works for us. And number two, we'll never run out of people to surprise because they're being born faster than we can photograph them.
That's true.
So, I mean, Candid Camera is just a perpetual motion machine.
Peter, I'm curious about like getting people to sign off after they've been pranked or they go through this. And we've heard from other people in interviews, and I've heard like, you know, any type of prank show, which of course Candid Camera was the first.
Candid Camera was never mean-spirited, right? Like I feel like it would be harder for some other shows to get people to sign off, but you guys always had like almost like a classiness to you, where it was never like you were making the person look the fool, right?
Well, thank you for saying that, Dan. I underscore the fact that my father and I prided ourselves in never putting people in a situation that we would mind being put in ourselves. We never wanted things to go too far. We were never out to make people look bad, but rather to celebrate humanity and demonstrate time and time again that people are, by and large, good sports. Now, we do, as you said, have a very high percentage of agreeability, people signing those releases. There are occasions, it's rare, but there are occasions when someone won't sign. And it's usually because we have inadvertently photographed the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong other person.
I get it. I see.
So
Infidelity.
if you photograph a guy who's out with someone else's wife or girlfriend, you're not going to get a release. You might as well not even try.
Yeah, and that happens a lot.
My father once photographed a guy at a bank. And the gag was, you know, the pens are chained to the desk. And in my dad's case, he made the chain about 1.5 inches long. So you could touch the pen, but you could never maneuver it to write. That was the joke. One of the people he photographed that day turned out to be on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
Wow.
And was apparently casing the bank. But get a load of this. He signed a release with his real name.
Really?
Yeah, and of course, by the time the authorities figured that out, he was long gone. But it happened.
That's crazy.
Peter, I'm curious, with you and your dad writing these premises, have you become an expert in human behavior in the fact that when you write something, you basically know within probably 95% of how people are going to behave?
Because he's done it so much. Can you predict are you pretty good at predicting what you think is going to happen?
Yeah, you ever surprised?
Well, first of all, you flatter me by using the word writing. I mean, as if I'm really writing something. Let's call it
storyboarding, maybe?
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming.
Talking out loud, as you say.
But yeah, you do become better and better over time, as I think everyone in every profession becomes. The more you do it, the better you are at it. And in my case, yeah, I've gotten pretty good at predicting an outcome. But let me tell you, I have learned not to tell our staff or our crew, hey, watch this guy, I know what he's going to do, because you're always fooled. Someone always surprises you. But my dad, bless his heart, years ago tried to pitch a spin-off to Candid Camera, and the idea of the show was predicting what would happen in a Candid Camera scene. So they'd show it up to a point, then stop and ask the contestants to try to guess what would happen. It might have worked as a game show. I think someone else later tried it, actually. It's rather boring. Who needs it? The fun, I think viewers are instinctively guessing in their own mind as they watch our show, what do they think will happen? And what's really good about Candid Camera is not, frankly, predicting what that person would do, but thinking to yourself, what would I do?
Right.
That's really what it's all about.
That sense of self.
How would I react under that tough situation?
Do you think you caused, because Candid Camera was so big and iconic, and it's become almost
it's like Kleenex.
Where someone's like, anytime you're being secretly videotaped.
Oh, that's a Candid Camera show. Like I say that, like I'll be like, oh, that's Candid Camera. It's not, but everything that is that way is Candid Camera.
Yeah. Here's my take on that. I hate it when people imitate our format. I'm not a good sport in watching derivative shows, but I take great pleasure in realizing how tough it is for all of our competitors, because they shoot something, they think it's kind of funny, they try to surprise the person at the end, and invariably that person says, "You mean I'm on Candid Camera?" And they have to edit that out because they can't use our name.
Trademark?
Wow.
Look at that.
I'm also curious, Peter, that throughout the time of you doing this, like we've seen nowadays where people just get lazy. And I used to be in radio back in the day, and I remember doing on the man on the street bits, and I realized that it was easier to fake them and pretend that it's real than actually do it real.
This is our number one question, because we were discussing this behind the scenes.
And then now the internet is full of like pranks and Candid Camera, put that in quotes, style pranks.
And they're not real.
And they just fake them because they realize it would take all day to get a good piece of footage, and they'll just fake it. And then people on the internet are like, they don't know if it's real or not. And I'm curious if you and your dad ever thought at one point, like, man, it takes us all day of shooting to get this one.
Let's just fake it.
If we got some actors and faked it, we could knock them all out fast.
Yeah, 30 years ago, my father sued the Fox network because we had found out that they were doing a hidden camera type show, and it was fake, and we had video proof of that, and we sued them. Didn't stop much and didn't change history, but we did sue them, and we did get a payment. But you're absolutely right. A lot of the stuff that masquerades nowadays as hidden camera or prank type stuff is faked in one way or another. I'll point out to you that a lot of these shows don't even claim to be hidden camera. They kind of take a Sacha Baron Cohen approach, which is, we have a documentary crew. So yeah, you see that camera over there, but it's not really for entertainment. It's just for a documentary.
Right.
So of course you should just be natural. Oh, that's baloney. You know, people aren't natural when they know a camera is pointed at them.
Yep.
And there is a lot of fakery, but really to the underlying answer to your question, we wouldn't dare fake something, even if we thought we could save time, as you said, Tom, or get something potentially funnier, because our whole premise is based on trust us, this is real, and therefore it's entertaining. Some of the stuff I put on, frankly, if you scripted it and used actors, it wouldn't really be that funny. It's wonderful because it's real.
Right.
Yep.
And it's believable that way. And, that's our secret sauce. We're not going to mess with that.
Yeah. I always liked, again, not to say it again, because I kind of said this earlier, but I always enjoyed that your tagline for the end of it, to kind of tie a little bow on the fact that it is a positive sort of human experience, is smile. You're on Candid Camera.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, it's not negative. It's
not we got you.
Yeah, it's not like in your face. It's not.
Yeah, you've been punked.
Yeah, it's smile. You're right. That's all by design, right?
Dan, in the first 20 years of my dad's career, he hadn't thought of that line. It didn't exist. And he was struggling with the fact that back then, critics and some other letter writers insisted that Candid Camera was mean-spirited. Now, that's compared to what was on, I guess, in those days. It certainly wasn't mean-spirited in our judgment, and definitely not compared to what you see today. But the fact is, the phrase "smile, you're on candid camera" was born out of his desire to solve a problem. The problem was people think we're being mean, and how could we counteract that? And he coined this phrase, "smile, you're on candid camera."
That's great.
And it worked wonders. It caught on. It became, a favorite phrase in entertainment. And then it became a self-fulfilling thing. People were sort of conditioned that if they were ever caught by us, they would be happy and smiling because,
Like,
it's like, it's the way Richard Dawson conditioned people to kiss him,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
People were ready for it. You're right.
And Peter, I'm sure you're aware, but like spinoffs, I'll call them spinoffs because Candid Camera was the original. But like, let's talk about scare tactics. Like, people will put people in situations where they legitimately think they're going to die and they're going to leave their families, and they're filming them, and they're like, look at this person. He's scared. He thinks he's going to be murdered by the serial killer or whatever they said the situation. And then I feel like
it's not the same vibe.
You're like, man, like you're filming this person, and the fear in his eyes is that he thinks his life is over. Yeah. Like, that's too far. And so I'm curious of what your thoughts on like the extreme version of this.
My thought is that's not my taste in television, but my other thought is it's a big free world, and I believe in freedom of expression. And if that works for some producers and some viewers, then more power to them. I think it makes us look better. I think it clears the lane that we're going down. So, if people want to imitate us, I'd prefer they do it that way than take more care and thought and do it our way.
Yeah. I also think your way is harder. To get the guy to do something completely out of the ordinary, like the guy sawing off the thing. That is so unique.
We do a lot of things that make our work harder than you might think it has to be. For example, we insist, even to this day, in shooting with a single camera. Candid Camera is done with one hidden camera. Occasionally, we'll shoot an establishing shot from the other direction or cutaway. But for the most part, it's one camera aimed at this unsuspecting person. And therefore, that camera can only go in and out, left and right, but it's always on, and it's one view. Now, here's the reason for that. My father's original concept was that the viewer would feel they were looking through a keyhole or through a hole in the fence and sort of eavesdropping on a scene.
Yeah, voyeuristic.
We try to recreate that with one camera. The minute you put a second camera and a third one up on the ceiling and a fisheye thing across the room, and you're cutting between them, number one, that's not believable. That looks like a TV show. And subconsciously, I think viewers are immediately suspicious when they see this TV production. It's not an eye through the keyhole.
Huh.
That is fascinating.
I never thought about because there's not like a bunch of GoPros hidden all over.
No, it moves. He's right. Left and right. Well, he's right. It's your show, but I mean like left and right, in and out. Yeah, I remember seeing that. I never knew it was by design.
Was it all a bunch of two-way mirrors? It must have been. You must have become a master of two-way mirrors.
No, the two-way mirror was only used very briefly, and it was hard with light. It cut down too much light for the camera. So my father invented an apparatus. If you want to look at the documentary I made about him,
yes,
it's called Mr. Candid Camera. It's a 90-minute documentary. It's downloadable on Amazon and other platforms.
Good to know. Yeah, I'm going to watch that.
But in that documentary, he actually shows how this concealment device works. But quickly, it uses the same principle as a teleprompter. You know that a teleprompter, the speaker is seeing the words, but the camera that's behind those words looks right through it. And that's because it's an angled piece of glass, and a light shining up from below. And the optics just work perfectly. It's a teleprompter principle. And that's in quick, simple form how we hide a camera.
That's
wow. Awesome. And the cameras, like, especially a long time ago, they were bigger and bulkier and like harder to hide. So it must have been like a huge puzzle to figure out, like, okay, not only you write a brilliant piece of like
his dad's inventing pieces of equipment,
but then you gotta hide a camera so no one can see it. There's a lot of moving parts there.
We still use a pretty big camera on a tripod, and we don't like those lipstick surveillance cameras because we don't want the surveillance look, and we want a camera operator to be able to do what I said, to follow the action carefully. And also, we probably could make it easier with smaller equipment, but we tend not to do that either. So,
wow.
I think that's cool. Yeah. I mean, why mess with it?
Oh, excuse me, guys. The book. Yeah, I'll tell him to ask about the book.
No. That was my next, Peter. I promise that I have it. That's my next question.
Sorry, we're geeking out a little bit on you. We're geeking out. I apologize.
We had so many questions for you. Let's talk about the book for a second. Playing POTUS: The Power of America's Acting Presidents. What made you come up with this idea?
It started during the pandemic. A lot of us thought, well, we'll kill this time when we can't do other work by sitting and writing. And so first I wrote a memoir, and that's out there if you're curious about my little life.
I am.
It's called Self-Amused. That's my memoir book. But then after that, I was looking for other things to write. And I had written a lot of political newspaper columns, serious stuff.
Sure.
About the presidential race back in 2016 and then in 2020. And I write in USA Today and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. And I treat that stuff fairly seriously. But I stumbled onto the fact that with Joe Biden and Donald Trump before him, there was a lot of concern about the impressionists, the people who did the impersonations on TV. Because with Biden, it was really the first time that in our divided politics, people started thinking, his supporters started thinking, we can't do Saturday Night Live sketches or impersonations of Joe Biden because it's too perilous. People will not vote for him and they'll reelect Trump. And it all of a sudden sucked the humor right out of the whole thing because it became so serious. And I became interested in this whole matter of impersonating presidents. And the more I looked, the more fascinating it became. And I spent over a year and a half interviewing and researching. It really goes back to John Kennedy. When Kennedy was in office in the early 60s, there was a very, very famous record album called The First Family. And it was a performer named Vaughn Meader who did JFK.
Yeah.
And that started the whole thing. That album sold 7.5 million albums. And to this day is the biggest selling comedy album of all time.
Wow.
Before Vaughn Meader, it wasn't done. Nobody impersonated a sitting U.S. president. It was not done. After Vaughn Meader, it was done by hundreds of people. And you had David Fry and Rich Little.
Yeah,
and then moving forward, you had Chevy Chase doing Gerald Ford.
Yep.
And then you had Dana Carvey doing George H.W. Bush, and Phil Hartman doing Clinton, and Jay Farrow doing Obama. And the list goes on and on and on. I mean, it's a big list. And as I talked to these people and interviewed them for the book, I discovered the fact that they all had great stories. How'd they come up with it? What barriers were there to putting it on the air? What was it like when they met the actual presidents and befriended these guys who they were mocking on TV? And the story got better and better and richer. And I'm so happy with the way it turned out. And as you said, the book is called Playing POTUS, as in POTUS, President of the United States.
Yeah.
And it just went on sale
Congrats.
recently.
That's really, really cool. What an interesting.
Here's a shameless plug. It's in hardcover, paperback, Kindle. You can get it wherever you buy books, online or in a store. And I'm very proud of it. So you might want to look into that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
That's really cool.
That's a super
And
interesting.
here's the thing, guys. I just want to say this because
Please.
I know the listeners want to hear this. For every book that's sold, $3 out of every sale goes directly to paying for my golf lessons. So I think that's important.
Yeah, he's an honest man. Peter is an honest man.
That's why you got the goods.
Yeah.
You swerved me there.
When he grabbed the phone and he's like, "Oh yes, about the." Oh man, it just made me love you even more. Do you ever travel to Orlando? We'd love to get you in here to tell more stories, man. I mean, it's really been a treat to get to talk to you.
I come very close. I play baseball in national tournaments, and every November I play in Fort Myers, except sadly last year it was all wiped out by the storm.
Yeah.
I play in Fort Myers at least once a year, and so at least I'm in your state. And I've done my stage show in the Clearwater, Tampa areas.
Oh, I'd love
I
to
have
see
not gotten to Orlando in a long time. My sister and her daughter, who are Disney fanatics, go to Orlando like 3 times a year. And I think I have figured that they have our family covered with that trip. So.
Yeah, well, Dr. Phillips, we got a good venue here for a nice little spoken word. If you ever want the top tier theater in the Southeast, we'd love to have you come and tell us stories.
I think I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, I'll talk to him. I'll tell him to reach out.
Peter, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I mean, honestly, we could talk to you all day long about your life.
About
it's
everything.
super interesting.
We didn't even get into the time. Weren't you on a plane that was hijacked?
That was my dad. 1969, before they had much security. He was flying from New York to Miami. Halfway to Miami, a guy pulled a knife and took the flight attendant with the knife to her neck and went up into the cockpit. And the pilot soon announced, there's a guy here who wants to go to Cuba, and I think we'll do what he says. And the flight went to Cuba. Now, everyone on the flight was absolutely panic-stricken and saying their prayers and everything you'd expect, until one person sitting up front fairly close to my father recognized him and stood up and said, "Hey, everybody, no worries. This is a big joke for Candid Camera. That's Alan Funt." And
oh, my God.
People started cheering, and everybody was
well,
happy.
the guy's got the knife.
And they were making so much noise that the hijacker came out of the cockpit to see what the hell is going on, and they gave him a big round of applause.
What the hell? Oh, my God. Could you imagine? Hold on. Could you imagine the hijacker? What he thought? Like, he's like, he's like, is this a fever dream? What's happening? Like, I'm hijacking him. They're applauding. And then what happened?
My father was truly scared to death. They landed in Havana. The guy was taken away. It flew on to Miami. Nobody was hurt. Everything was fine. And as they were leaving the plane in Miami, this same woman who had identified him stopped by his seat and said, "Smile my ass."
Oh, my God. Peter, you could have a stage show of just telling some stories.
That's fantastic.
And I mean, listen, I'm definitely gonna get your biography.
We're gonna check out everything that you've referenced. Sam was putting links in our chat room about the documentary about your dad. Obviously, gonna check out the book. And hey, thanks again for the time. We appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Well, you two guys, thanks so much. Take care.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we'll see
Peter.
you soon. That was how cool was that, dude?
God, what a super interesting life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like his entire
That was the last thing I wrote on my paper was dad, or I wrote hijack.
yeah.
I got it wrong, but hey, at least he told the story about his dad.
And then also to have the discipline to be like, this is how we're gonna do it. We're not gonna fake it. It was gonna one camera. Like how hard that is insane.
Okay, in
like,
a weird way.
Telling some production company that they used to do this way would blow their mind.
I mean, it would be easier back then, though, right? Because that's less equipment.
But here's the thing.
Keep it simple.
He doesn't vary from what he wants to do, which sounds a lot like somebody who's doing that right now on YouTube, Mr. Beast, Jimmy. That guy does it his way, and people tell him, you should do this. And he goes, no, I do it this way. This is the way I do it, and it works. And he doesn't mess with he has the formula he enjoys, and he does it.
The fact that they wrote the majority of all
I didn't
that.
know that. I thought they had a writer room. I thought they had guys.
That is a testament to their brilliance.
Well, people thought you had writers too. You wrote all your stuff.
No, it's
I'm
stupid.
It's not stupid.
Yeah, it's not even comparable because to write.
I thought they had writers. I didn't know it was just him and his dad.
Yeah, but to write premises that end up being that funny and even the situation of the gate going up and down, that's one of 5,000 different ideas that they come up with, all really well written, interesting,
perfectly crafted pranks. But they can't be too far.
Yes, no,
See,
exactly.
I wouldn't be hired, because you're constantly going too far, Dan.
The exact opposite is the Brazilian prank shows where you just stick your head in a box and they hit you with a pie.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest. Yeah. There's no thought in
There's no thought.
It's like, look here. And then you're like, what? And then they hit you hard with a pie in the face.
Just go too far. Like you're riding a bike. You're stealing a bike. And so there's a rope tied to it.
But those are fake.
But still, you go flying forward. You're hurting yourself.
I can tell those are fake because I see the person brace for the rope right before, because they're
he's known how to do that before.
Anyway, Peter knows. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yep. All right. Great. Are we